Okay, thank you everybody for showing up this evening. We're going to go ahead and it is 6 o'clock by my watch. We're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. We have enough here for a quorum this evening. And as we get started, I want to go ahead and open it up for, we have a public comment. So anybody that has anything to address to the board here that's not on the agenda, we'll speak to the specific agenda items as they come up within the meeting tonight. But anything else outside of that? Do they have anything? Nope. Okay. We'll go ahead and close then the consent agenda. And then moving on to the next phase of it will be the minutes from the last two meetings. The meeting of June 5th, 2023 and November 7th, 2022. Does there any amendments to that we need to make, or do we accept those as they are? Anybody want to make amendments?
I have no changes.
No changes? Anybody make a motion that we accept it?
I make a motion.
Okay, accepted. Everybody good? Good. Nancy made the second. Okay. All right. Moving right along, breakneck speed. Here we go. Okay, now for the public hearing portion of this evening's agenda. Okay, the first one, I'm going to ask the town to go ahead and read it in. It is for what section was it? Sorry. The first thing on not the minutes, but AIR 23-120. You go ahead and read it.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, everyone. Shrupa Sen, Director of Planning and Development Services. The next item on your agenda is D2, public hearing item. Hold a public hearing, discuss, consider, and act upon a request for variance to section 3.0604, screening standards, subsection B, general requirements as it relates to residential screening, including but not limited to screening materials at the East Side Water Treatment Plant located at 300 Berry Road, which is zoned industrial. Case number 1719-3, ZBA 300 Berry Road. On the presentation in front of your screen, we have the aerial map showing the Dallas Water Utilities property, highlighted kind of in cyan. The property is located north of Cyan, east of Berry Road, and then south of Larkin. So Long Creek kind of changes into Larkin. As you see west of, sorry about that. As you see west of Berry is where their existing East Side Water Treatment Plant is. This property east of Berry is mostly vacant with some facilities still there. So the reason for this request is to receive a variance from the section mentioned here from the residential screening material requirement of the UDO. So whenever we have a industrial or non-residential zoned property adjacent to a residential zone property, in this case, I don't know whether I can point, always wonder. In that kind of corner where some of the residential zone properties are nestled within all this DWU owned properties, these properties are zoned industrial, and these properties along Larkin are zoned SF3 or single family residential. So the UDO requires the screening to be installed by the non-residential development property owner, and it has to be either a solid masonry screening wall or live screen. So there are two types of requirements that are being dealt with here. One is from our town side, we have the UDO residential screening requirement, whereas DWU, who is the owner of the property and the facility, they also have security requirements based on their own code as well as TCEQ, where they have to secure their property. These are critical infrastructure facilities where they have to be secured. So the live screen option really doesn't work in this case. The only other option remaining for them would be a solid masonry wall. Now, if I were a homeowner, you wouldn't necessarily prefer a solid 8-foot tall masonry screening wall all around your property. Besides that, the requirement from DWU side is if you have a solid wall securing your property, you have to have security cameras. So that adds another level of complicacy in this. So they're requesting a variance from the UDO requirement, which only the board can approve, is from the material to allow wrought iron fencing along the portion where the property abuts residential properties. For the reasons explained in the background memo, staff recommends approval of the variance request. If we go to the next slide, we'll be able to see, yes. So on this site plan, it's also part of your packet for the Board of Adjustment meeting tonight. The areas that are highlighted in green with the linear foots of the length identified as well, wherever it's highlighted in green, that's where they are proposing a wrought iron fence. And also the area where it's highlighted in yellow, south towards Cyan Road, that section would be chain link. Now that requirement of solid wall does not apply south on Cyan because there is no residential zone property, and actually our city limit line or town limit line runs through that area as well. So across Cyan is not town of Sunnyvale. Now focusing on the green area, that's where, if you remember where I was showing on the aerial, this is the segment that's in question, where by UDO, by following strictly the UDO requirement, they would be required to put a residential screening of solid masonry wall, where they're requesting a wrought iron screening wall, decorative wrought iron fence. There is a small section of about roughly 300 feet that's within FEMA floodplain that runs along this southern edge. In this, see where you can kind of see where the floodplain is going, that 300 feet area. The existing homeowner along that section also has barbed wire fence, and because of FEMA floodplain requirements, we cannot put solid barriers there, and they're proposing to match the similar barbed wire fence for that small portion. Now, luckily, that portion is kind of interior, where it won't be visible from Larkin when you are driving on Larkin. On the next slide, and also let's stay on this slide, on the left of your screen, you have the details. The top one is the wrought iron fence detail. The bottom one is the chain link fence detail that would be along Cyan. If you go to the next slide, there are some site photos taken from Larkin. Originally, this request or this process started because we were notified by concerned homeowners where sections of chain link fence was being put up by Dallas Water Utilities. There was some confusion with their contractor, so the town put a stop work order on that chain link fence process, and then we kind of told them, okay, this is the UDO requirement, what can you do? And we suggested that you have to get a variance approved first before you can even put up the wrought iron fence if the board approves the material change. So this is how it stands now. The photo on the top left, that's actually taken again from Larkin, but the first residential zone property that's there, Entry Drive. If you could zoom in or look a little closer, you can see a portion of chain link fence, but all those areas are going to be removed and be installed with wrought iron fence if the board approves the material change. Same on the south side, on the middle photo, I would say. That one is the area where a portion of floodplain, as you go farther in, you would be able to see, and the tree line in between the residential and the DWU property. The black posts that are visible on the photo, those would have been the wrought iron post. And if you look at the 90-degree segment, that was the chain link fence segment. Same on the photo on the up top north. They had installed a chain link fence, but they will have to take those sections down and put wrought iron if approved this variance request. So that's all I have for you for this request. More details in terms of what the code specifically says and why we are processing this variance is included in the staff report that was part of your packet. There's 2 staff members here from Dallas Water Utilities District present tonight if you have any question for them, and I'll be happy to answer any question for you. Thank you.
I have a question. So what is the UDO would require residential screening or a wall? Is that right? What is residential screening mean?
So whenever a non-residential property abuts a residential property, it is required to provide, and I have the section copied here, it is required to provide screening from the industrial or non-residential property to residential property, and the responsibility for providing that screening is on the non-residential property developer. The material is the one that's kind of in question here, which is the only two options of screening suggested by the UDO is either a solid masonry wall or a live screen, which is like trees and vegetation
I
to
see,
provide
okay.
visual screening.
Okay.
In this case, because of security reasons, they cannot do the live screen. They have to
Right.
secure the property. So the next best option was a decorative wrought iron where it matches the homeowners across the street on Larkin. They already have, some of them have wrought iron screening. Does
Okay.
that answer
Yeah,
your
no,
question?
I understand. I didn't understand what the live screening meant, but
Live
it's
screen like
just trees.
vegetation
Okay,
and
yeah.
trees.
Okay. Okay. And you said there was a section where neither, where they would preserve the chain link, or not the chain link, the
The
barbed wire. Yeah.
So not necessarily preserve, I would say. What I was mentioning is the homeowner along that, the property owner along that portion already has a barbed wire fence installed. What DWU would do is they would kind of add their own piece of barbed wire on their side of the property and only within the portion in the floodplain. So there is a longer section, and I have the length. I know we can't read it from that scaled. So it's about 300 feet, little more or less, that would be the barbed wire, but the rest of the 200 some feet and another 300 some feet would be wrought iron.
Okay, okay. And that barbed wire, I guess, is sufficient for safety concerns?
Yes, yes. And it also supports the floodplain requirement where we cannot block or impede the flow of water.
Okay. And have the homeowners been contacted and they're okay with the or the wrought iron?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So does that include all the homeowners along the east side of that?
Down Larkin Road, the entire length?
So we have sent notices out within 200 feet. So if we go back, so any property that was touched within that yellow boundary received notifications, and actually I have received phone calls from people who are living across Larkin who have reached out asking, and most cases, or not most cases, all cases where I have explained that it would be wrought iron fence versus the wall, they were happy with the option.
So you had no complaints against the wrought iron fence?
Is there any proposed plan for what the expansion's gonna look like? Is there, because right now, you know, it's just open field, so wrought iron sounds nice. But if there's industrial tanks and things right up against the property line, people might feel differently.
I do not have the answer to that question. I'm sure the DWU staff might be able to, but we also have to remember, even if they would have installed a 8-foot tall masonry wall, there would be the requirement of installing security cameras, because you have to be able to see through the fence, like there has to be visibility. So I agree that I haven't asked that specific question to the homeowner, but if I were a homeowner, I would rather go with a wrought iron fence. But I do agree that if there was an industrial building, for example, there are additional spacing requirements that per UDO they would have to meet. So I can only assume that it would not be right up to the property line. They will not be allowed to place the facility right up to the property line.
Yeah, I can see on the north side how far they're spaced out from the properties. I mean, it's hard to tell exactly what it is, but it's probably at least 100 feet or so.
And, the south boundary, the reason for, that's gonna be chain link fence, is that right? And that's also,
That's okay, because there is no residential adjacency on that side.
see, okay.
So they're not adjacent to any residential zone property.
okay, so that is also commercial?
So south of Zion is not within town of Sunnyvale.
Oh, I see, okay, okay.
Now, is the variance request just for that L section in the northeast corner, or is it the entire length of the eastern Larkin Road?
Because the eastern so if we go farther, say if we follow Larkin going, this is the section you're talking about?
Mhm.
So technically, because it's west of Larkin, they're not directly adjacent to the residential zone properties which are across from Larkin. So they do not trigger the residential adjacency or the screening requirement. The screening requirement is only triggered when the property lines they share a common property line between the industrial zone property and the residential zone property.
But they're gonna continue the wrought iron
Yes.
all the way down.
Yes.
So the only people that were contacted were the ones that are in that corner?
So, no,
Everyone in the yellow.
everyone within the 200 feet boundary, the notice boundary, we're sending notices out, which you can see majority of the notices would have gone. If you go west of Berry, that's all DWU property. South of Scion is not within town of Sunnyvale. So technically, all the residential properties in that corner, as well as north of Larkin, as well as east of Larkin, wherever it touched, that yellow line should have received a notification. So practically all the residential properties.
Questions?
And the
How
applicant,
many responses did you get back from?
none, other than the 2 phone calls that I got, none written response wise.
Any other questions?
No.
Anybody else? Thank you very much. Anybody else would like to present on this or ask questions of the board? Nobody coming forward, then we'll go ahead and close the public hearing part of it and have a discussion among the board.
Sure. There's nobody in the audience that has any, oh, I guess,
Before we move forward, we need to recognize
Jim Wade?
Jim Wade came in at 6:15.
Sorry for the lateness. Too many board meetings.
Thank you very much.
So I have a question, Mr. Chairman. So this is a wall that is, thank you. This is a wall that's going to be down Berry and Berry only? Or
No, Mark,
down Larkin?
correct.
Okay, thank you. And it's only going to be a wrought iron fence. So did DWU ever put the screening materials up on the Larkin side that is west of Long Creek? Long Creek going towards Clay,
You mean on the,
before they get to the truck property?
you mean west of Berry?
West of Berry, yes. But specifically west of the Long Creek intersection, which is where the entrance is.
I am not sure, but there are DWU staff members present here who can answer that question
Good.
probably better than I can, and just to,
So they were supposed to, prior agreement, they were supposed to screen that property off from the, across the street, Stone Canyon Development. So has that been done? If we
Again,
went out
I'm
there to
not-
see it, it would be there.
I'm not privy to that information, and for tonight's variance request though, it's only this section that is.
I
being
understand,
varied. I'm
but-
not aware of
Yeah,
such.
but I
screening
see
request.
somebody in the back there shaking their head that they've done that, which I assume is correct. So is there a reason why we can't screen this Larkin side so that the residents across the street are protected from the DWU property with something besides their protection of a wrought iron fence?
I'm not sure I'm following your question. Are you
So
talking
we've got
about
a wrought
this
iron,
section?
I'm sorry?
Are you talking about the section that's in this request.
We're talking about the Larkin Road, where they're preparing to set up or put up a wrought iron fence. So is there any reason why we can't require the living shrubs inside that fence to protect the visual optics of those people who live on Larkin Road?
Sure, you can request that. You can request that. And I'll have the Dallas Water Utilities staff.
So I know they can't use a living screen only,
Right.
so that requires a wrought iron. But they couldn't put a living screen inside the wrought iron so that they protect the residents on Larkin Road, just like we did years ago to protect the residents from Stone Canyon, from the visual optics of that water treatment plant.
They sure can. If you would like to make that part of the variance approval.
Anybody have any questions to what Mr. Wade's comment was?
No. I'm wondering if Dallas Water has any comments with
They could
respect to that?
Inside the wrought iron, they could put a living screen so that the residents here don't have to look into whatever
State
they're
your
gonna
name.
do in the future.
Mark Cottingame, Dallas Water Utilities, 1500 Marilla, Dallas, Texas, 75201. Okay, what specifically is the question that I can respond to?
Mr. Wade was proposing that in addition to the wrought iron fence, that inside the wrought iron fence, you put a live screening.
I think what we've done in the past, if we submitted a landscaping plan, which is brought before the town for consideration, I think we could do the same thing here.
You could do the same thing here, correct?
I don't see a reason why not.
Okay, good. I think it's important.
There's a little bit of a difference in this area. Like, I'm not sure exactly how familiar everyone is, and I don't have a graphic to explain it. But the wrought iron fence sits behind a row of trees. So I'm not sure exactly what you would see beyond the row of trees, other than maybe a little bit of the wrought iron fence. It's a decorative fence. It's a 8-foot tall, black in color, decorative fence. It's not going to be really viewable from Larkin Road because it sits behind trees that are in the city right away.
The uncertainty is the future use of this property, not knowing what it is, screening that off, because it could become more tanks, it could become a truck storage, it could become whatever you do on a water treatment plant. But as you can see, it's open land owned by DWU, which could be used for a number of different things. And we're trying to screen it away from our residents who are on Larkin Road.
Yes, sir. I don't think we have any issue of following the recommendation from staff to submit a landscaping plan or whatever the town might require.
And it's just a living screen. It's not, we're not worried about putting flowers out there. We're worried about putting some shrubbery out there that's going to protect that visual presence of that DWU plant,
Yes, sir.
even if it's vacant land right now. And it wouldn't have to be anything more than what you've done over on Larkin, west of the Long Creek intersection. And I haven't looked to see what that is, but I assume you've done it.
Yes, sir.
Is that all, Jim?
Yes, sir, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wade. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
So, based upon hearing that, then would you like to make an
I would-
suggest an altering for the proposed?
I would move that we approve the variance subject to the presentation of an acceptable landscape buffering plan on this property. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you come.
By the staff, you're saying?
By the staff, and get it appropriate approvals, however that has to go, but subject to the appropriate landscaping in this proposed area.
Chairman and Mr. Wade, just so that I'm clear, Are you requiring landscaping or live screening along all of Larkin or only where it adjacents to the residential properties? Because that's the only place where they're required to put live screen.
Yeah, this is a non-residential property against residential property.
Only along this corner.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm fine with that.
That corner?
At least that gets it somewhat protected.
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
Is that okay with the staff to be able to present to that? Add that to it?
Yes, so in your motion, if you're approving the variance of the wrought iron fence as explained on the graphics, with the addition of live screen along the residential zone properties, then that's what we'll
Okay.
request the Dallas Water.
Can you point out where you think we're talking about putting the landscape buffering?
So I don't know whether you can see the red dot.
I can.
Yes, so this L section, this is where the Dallas Water Utilities property is right adjacent to residential zone properties,
Okay.
triggering the screening requirement. If you're talking about this section or this section, they are doing wrought iron fence, but they are not required to do the live screen because it's not adjacent to residential zone property. It's across Larkin.
Well, we could certainly require it because it is in their visual. That's the same as we did when we protected Stone Canyon. Stone Canyon was across Larkin Road, Long Creek, whatever that road is.
I'm just stating what the UDO requires.
I know we have some residents that are on that end of Larkin. Anybody want to venture?
Based upon, there were only two
See.
people that responded to the phone calls, based upon the staff's comments.
Well, I would like to see that whole area landscaped because I think it's, if not, then we haven't protected those folks on Larkin at all. Because it is what they're gonna see across the road. And we have no idea what DWU will put onto that property.
So, Mr. Wade, are you requesting that they add the live screening to the addition of the fencing?
All the way
Wrought iron
from,
fence, all the way
all the
down?
way from the top north east corner of Larkin Road down all the way to the southeast corner of Larkin Road.
Even though there's a business already down on that corner?
Yeah, I don't care about the business, but I think you can't break it up.
So,
That's a very small piece. I don't know
so
why.
your concern is only for the residential areas?
Yeah, that residential
That
area on
yellow's
Larkin
touching.
Road. I mean, we got some pretty nice properties down there.
Not
And we
disagreeing with
fought
you.
to keep this property out of
Not disagreeing with you.
industrial, and we succeeded. Can't do anything about Dallas Water Utilities, but we kept it from being a rock crusher.
Okay.
And there's nothing that keeps it from not being something similar in the future,
Okay,
because they can do what they want to do.
all right, then, so, based upon hearing no other comments, no other questions? I'll wait until they're through.
You know, we actually probably be doing that whole yellow line that is on Larkin Road, the entire piece, including the old Daniel property.
So if I may, a couple of questions came up about what's the future plan for the site and what might that look like? So what I can tell you now, and you may know this already, so please forgive me if I'm telling you something you already know, but right now, that improvement right now is building some lagoons out there. The height and elevation is roughly, I don't know, Jose, how high? Yeah, so we're talking 5 or 6, 7 feet above where you'd stand from the road. Basically, the outside community wouldn't even know what's there. Just looks like dirt and grass. So, and that's on the area, if you were looking at that diagram, and I'm sorry, does this point? next slide for me? Sort of. If you notice in the bottom right-hand corner, there are a pair of what we're calling lagoons. That's the extent of the improvements that are there now. If you saw aerial photograph, there's not much to look at. But that's the current improvement. So there's not a master plan per se to identify what additional improvements might be in this area. So right now, that's the extent of the improvements that we have identified and are constructing today. So I think that addresses.
Is
one
that
of the
natural man-made or is that concrete?
It's earth, so it's the existing dirt, so it's an excavation, and we tried to do kind of a mass balance of what we excavated to use that for the berms. So there's no imported soil, it's all the soil that came from that site to build the berms. There is some concrete, there's a roadway there. Might be visible if you're standing on the, if you're standing on Larkin Road looking west, you might see the concrete road. You would definitely see it if you're on Berry Road, but you won't see it from Sain because the railroad tracks are in between Sain and those berms. What else is out there? There's on the west edge of that expansion area, there's a concrete pad. Thank you. That concrete pad is meant for give people the ability to mobilize there and store equipment, but it's you're talking vehicles, nothing crazy going on there. No buildings, nothing vertical at this point. So that's the extent of the improvements that are going on in the area today. And I think, as staff mentioned today, the requirement for fencing was required by TCEQ. So we were required to fence the property. We worked with the town, and like you said, there's a little mix-up with the contractor as we got into construction. But following the permit, we hedged our bet towards decorative fencing for the entire property, with the exception of the areas that we're talking about for the variance today. In terms of, maybe the word is comfortable, uncomfortable. I don't know if that's a word that we mention in government, because everything is uncomfortable. But the ability to extend landscaping along that entire length of fence, the distance is, how long is that? Can somebody tell me? I can't see. So 3,000, I don't know what the number is. 3,300 feet, right? Okay, that sounds right, almost 3,500 feet. And then to do landscaping, I would need to go up to kind of figure that out from a budgetary point of view. I'm uncomfortable saying that I could do that or can't do that at this point. But what I can do, I believe I can commit to submitting a plan for review, and then we can work through that.
And does the FEMA floodplain area, does that have to stay protected? You can't build on that?
It does. As far as, I believe we talked about putting the chain link, or to leave the barbed wire fence there. That's so we don't impede flow and cause an issue, but it's required by FEMA to not obstruct that area.
Okay, so there's probably not going to be any development in that corner.
No, sir. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Any other questions I can answer?
Any other questions from the board?
Did you say the two lagoons are raised up 8 feet?
Roughly from the road. I'm gonna give you a rough elevation, so don't quote me on the actual vertical difference, but if you were driving down Larkin Road, let's say you came from Sain and went north on Larkin, you look to your left, you're gonna see some raised earth, and you might say, what is that? And now you know more than most people. It's a lagoon. It stores water.
Can be built or not be built.
It could be put there. Mr. Wade, do you have another question?
It's my inclination to do everything I can to protect residential from encroachment by industrial, including government. I know the water plant's not going anywhere. I just really feel like we ought to protect those residents from future industrial development.
That's our charge, is to sit here and to
Yeah,
ensure the integrity
I
of
don't-
the town.
I like the wrought iron fence. I'm glad for that. That is better than chain link. But either one presents, they're already building there. And we certainly aren't getting any complaints. But we don't know what the future holds. and this is maybe our only opportunity to say something. And it's not to deny the chain link, not to deny the
Request for
wrought iron
variance.
fence. It's to provide additional protection for
Okay.
those residents. And I will admit, they don't have the protection today, but this is our opportunity to provide that.
So, is there a recommendation?
Now, I move that we grant the variance subject to a approved, subject to a review by the staff of a live screening wall in what is denoted in this green line,
Okay.
such that it protects the residents. Doesn't have to be, well, that's not part of the motion.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions to that motion or would like to change that motion?
No. No.
Does anybody have a second for the motion?
I'll second it.
Okay. So we got the motion on the table.
Okay, so now I'll just make the comment. It doesn't have to be elaborate. It has to be provided and maintained.
Okay. Now, we have the motion on the table to approve the request for variance for the metal fencing with the addition to staff provided guidance on live screening for the areas marked in green. Does that sufficiently encompass what you were saying, sir?
Yes, sir.
All right, so let's go ahead and take a vote. All in favor? Please raise your hand. Okay, everybody voted for. So the variance request with that stipulation has been approved. Thank you very much, town, for your time and consideration on that one. Okay, moving on. Thank you very much, Jim. Jim, we're all here to thank you for helping us honor the charter, protecting our town. Thank you, sir. Okay, so moving on to our next item of business for this evening. We have item on agenda AIR 23-121. It's another variance request, and would the town like to present? Staff?
Good evening. I'm Michael King. I'm the senior planner for town of Sunnyvale. Agenda item 3, or actually, public hearing item number 3. So hold a public hearing, discuss, consider, and act upon a request for a variance to sections 3.04.04 supplemental development standards, subsection A, accessory buildings of single-family residential 3. Zoning district regarding allowed minimum setback of accessory buildings to adjacent residents at the property located at 323 Lakeside Trail. This is case number 1790, ZBA, the Maha accessory building. It's agenda item report AIR-23-121. So what we've got is just a little over a half acre. It's a lot on a cul-de-sac at 323 Lakeside Trail. The applicant's requesting a zoning variance to section 3.04.04. A portion of it is shown in the chart on the screen there. To reduce the minimum allowed setback of accessory structures within SF3 zoning. The requirement for a setback from adjacent residence is 20 feet. The applicant is asking for a little bit around 16 feet. Staff recommendations for the reasons explained in this and in the memo. We recommend denial of the variance request. As per the UDO, the property being approximately 0.55 acres in size can have an accessory structure no less than 20 feet from the primary structure. The applicant's proposing to build a garage approximately 16 feet from the primary structure. No natural or physical hardship exists in this variance request. If you can see from the diagram of the property, the garage structure is on the south side, just south of the house and kind of adjacent to the pool cabana or pool house. And it's within or outside of the setback of the side property, so you can see right there. There were 14 letters of notification within 200 feet of the subject property mailed out. Staff has received 5 responses now. We got 2 tonight. 5 responses in support of the applicant. We have the standard 7 circumstances warning a variance, unique circumstances, minimum necessary relief required to alleviate the undue hardship, preservation of property rights, no substantial detriment to the public good, orderly use of land, precedent, and finding of undue hardship. What we have here is on these, I've also shown the design of the house or the garage structure that they want to build. And last but not least is the site photos. This is their residence. They want to build on the portion of the outside of the house, kind of where you can see where the garage is, behind the garage. And there's a little bit of a retaining wall and a setback, so it's going to be a little bit lower. There's a gradual slope from Eagles Crest Drive down towards a pond just to the north. But beyond that, I'm here to take any questions y'all may have.
What's the, what determines the 20-foot? I know that's the rule, but what is the physics behind that? Why 20 feet?
The UDO specifies, has specific distances for, depending on the size of the lot, the minimum setback is 10 feet on a smaller lot, and then it gets further away the bigger the lot goes. Part of that is due to fire separation, and also part of it is just to separate the buildings from being clustered, and having a cluster of buildings on a large lot is detrimental to the neighboring homes.
And the 20 feet is for what size of lot?
It's for 1/2 acre to 1 acre.
And this is closer to 1/2 acre, is that right?
Yes. 0.55 acres.
Okay, and for less than 1/2 acre, it'd be 10.
It would be 10 feet.
If they had just a slightly smaller yard, it would be 10.
Yes.
Okay.
So they're 0.05 over the limit for going down to 10.
Yes, sir.
So they're very close.
Yes, sir.
Other questions, Mr. King?
Right, we have, the applicant is here. He has a short presentation. If you would.
Please state your name and address, please.
Good evening, Chairman Turner, members of the board. Eric Maha has mentioned 323 Lakeside Trail. I am the applicant. And I believe we have a few additional photos that may be helpful. We are looking to build it. It would be a single car garage type structure. We're about to have 2 teenage drivers in the house, and so to have some additional parking on the property, this is the proposed structure. As mentioned, the property is slightly over 1/2 acre, and then you can see on the right, that's the actual full chart, given the setback requirements. And you can can see from half an acre to an acre, it jumps up from 10 to 20 as mentioned, and then it goes in 5-foot increments thereafter. So it jumps, that large jump is right at the break point where we're at in this property. And so we're just requesting somewhere between 10 and 16 foot. We've worked with some concrete folks to see how the elevation would work. If we could shorten it to 10 foot, I think that would be ideal in this situation. But certainly the 20 foot for a few different reasons would cause a problem to some neighbors, I believe. But all the other requirements would be met: 8-foot wall, minimum of 2 structures on the property, well within the square footage requirement. So the request tonight to the board is that 10 to 16 foot variance down from the 20. And then on the next slide, we have kind of a zoomed in version. The proposed structure would be at the end of the driveway there, so you could drive right into the structure. And then there's a pool structure close to the pool area, and the whole goal in this is to not have the new structure jut out past the existing pool structure. And it would save on some of the sight lines from the neighbors certainly, and then Eagles Crest. It is all wrought iron fencing. There is a pond on the top of it's not in the picture, but up top there, so you can see from Eagles Crest down to the pond area. And so we're trying to preserve that for the neighbors, those sight lines. This is an older photo, but the neighbor directly that we share a property line with, they've built a pool structure and kind of a pool area there. So another part of this project would be to kind of get out away from that further down the driveway. And then the next picture, currently the red would be the 20-foot setback as required under the code. The yellow would be if we started the proposed structure right at the end of the driveway, and then the green would be if we were able to move a little closer to preserve more green space and preserve some of those sight lines as well. And then all three, as you notice, are 5 foot off the property line. And then finally, just
Just
the
a
last.
quick question, please,
Yes.
if you don't mind. So your proposal is for the yellow, or a proposal for the green, or for the red?
For the green, somewhere between 10 and 16 foot. Like I said, it takes some elevation work to see if we can make it up to the new slab, and so we're thinking it's going to be around 14 to 16 foot, thereabouts would be the location.
Okay, thank you.
As mentioned, one of the components, we feel like these setbacks are more guidelines. This is a regular shaped lot. If we go to the next page, it's not a uniform rectangle or square type lot, and so it's hard to fit some of these setback requirements in a regular shaped lot such as this. And you'll see it's somewhat narrow, and then it fans out. And so, like I said, it's about 5 foot that we're asking for relief. Again, it would preserve more green space, and certainly the sight lines would be preserved in this case. And then also we have a letter of approval from the HOA. We're in the homestead. The homestead has approved it conditioned on the board's approval of a variance. And the homestead, some of the feedback we got is they like the idea of having parking on the property, not on the street or in the driveway. We have pictures of the proposed structure. It'll be all stone with some windows and landscaping and hardscaping. There'll be a courtyard in between the proposed structure and the existing structure, decorative gates and garage doors and things like that. So visually, it would tie in architecturally with the rest of the buildings on the property. I believe the last few slides are just some of the design photos, along with that HOA approval letter. And we have talked with all the neighbors, both directly next to us and in the neighborhood, and didn't see any pushback from that standpoint.
Any questions?
So the plans show 16-foot setback. Is that you're not exactly sure on that yet?
The 16 foot's based on the current driveway where it ends. If we were to put the new structure right next to the current driveway, the hope would be if we could move it up a little bit, if we could figure out the grading to get into the new slab, we'd propose to move it a little closer to that 10-foot mark, preserving more green space and so on. But we really wouldn't know that until we get to the engineering on the slab. We've talked to a few concrete folks, and it's going to take a little grade work to get it up. at minimum 16.
Is one of the responses that we received back from your neighbor there to your right, or your left?
I believe so, 321. Oh,
She's here.
So the neighbor to the left responded she's okay.
I can let her speak for herself if you like.
She's
I believe
shaking her
there's a
head.
letter- I believe there's,
Please, could you come up, state your name and address?
Sorry
please?
about that. Just wanted an affirmative, not a speech.
No, you asked, that's fine.
My name is Sarah Smith, and I'm at 321 Lakeside Trail. So I am in favor. I sent my paper in earlier today, but I would prefer the 16 or less because it does push it more to the front build line and keeps our sightline of the pond from our backyard, which is where we did just also build a pool and building with views of the pond.
So clarification, you're the next door neighbor.
I am the next door
Because
neighbor.
right there, you're okay with it being right beside you,
Yes,
and you're okay with the proposed ask at a 16-foot
yes,
versus 20.
or less would even be better.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody have questions for her while she's up? Thank you.
member of the HOA Architectural Committee is in attendance if there's questions from the project design itself. Mr. Salser.
Is the materials, as stated, shown here in the drawings, it's not tin shed, right?
It's going to be a nice stone structure to
Okay.
tie in with the existing structure.
And you said the HOA approved it,
Yes, sir. Subject to board approval.
subject to the variance request, yes. Thank you. I see we have some others in the audience.
I got a small dog in the 5 list. Gary Smothers, 312 Eagles Crest. I'm in the same deal about the view. Sidelines, we've been talking the last 30 minutes about sidelines over on Larkin. We can see the pond. I would prefer 10 foot up versus the 16, just because it just puts it further where we do have gray sidelines. If you can tell, Eagles Crest, Lakeside, we're a tight community. I trust everything he's gonna build. He's gonna build a very nice structure and it's gonna be sound. He's thinking about us for the sideline, so I just ask for you guys to think about that. I mean, Sunnyvale, we're losing sites. We'd love to keep that sideline. So thanks for your consideration. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Smothers. Any other questions, or anybody else would like to present or come before the board?
Derek Salser, 345 New Hope Road, Homestead. I'm the chairman of the Architectural Control Committee of the Homestead. 23-year resident there, resident number 10, I think. So we looked at this case as a win-win-win. It was a win for the owner, win for the neighbors, and for the community. I know the UDO is just a document. It's not a living and breathing thing. It's a guideline, not a straitjacket. So in this case, I think you've heard the case that this would be a better street, a better layout with the way it's proposed. So that's my my commentary. If anybody has any questions for us as the HOA.
Thank you very much.
Is this gonna be a completely bricked or stone structure? All stone, okay. So
Okay. Anybody else would like to comment before I close public?
Oh, sorry, last question.
Sure.
So with the 16-foot setback, it looks like it's lined up exactly kind of with your pool cabana?
Yes, sir, that's a good point. It would be, in order to fit an automobile, it would be that yellow line. It would line up almost, it would be slightly up, about a foot from an existing cabana.
So if we lessened it even more, the sight line is kind of still blocked by the pool cabana?
Correct. And there'll be no additional blocking, if you will.
Yeah, so I can see it like 17 foot, we're blocked a little.
There is still some yes, if the neighbor's standing in that pool area of theirs, they'd be blocked just a
But
clip of it.
if we went down to the 10 feet, your pool cabana still is blocking that
Yes.
anyways, so.
Yeah, so the new structure would have no bearing on that.
Okay.
The point about us going through this process, it's not cheap to request a variance, and so we're just trying to think of our neighbors and their sightlines. And that's the reason we're here tonight, so.
Appreciate you doing it, thank you. So, any other comments, any other questions?
So is this request, it's to get a variance from the 20. Can we make a recommendation that it be 10 to 15 specifically? And let them iron it out with his concrete guy and his very gracious next door neighbor?
Do we have any more questions for them? If not, let's close the public part of it, and we'll have the board discussion. So Jim, Mr. Wade, Mr. Councilman Wade, I understand that you're, not Councilman, not no more. But, Mr. Wade, I hear that you're asking for maybe some latitude on the actual variance request of 16 feet, somewhere between the 16 to the 10.
No, he's not asking for 16, he's asking for a variance from the 20.
Variance from the 20 to a
From
16.
the 20, so can we specify that it be granted from 10 to 16, subject to?
Jim, I would, that doesn't make any sense. It's either 10 or 15 or whatever the minimum is. We set the minimum. So if we were gonna say 10, then 10, the rest of it doesn't matter.
But if he can't do 10, what's he up to next? Because of his concrete guy?
No, if we set it at 10 and he makes it 15, that still follows the 10.
Okay, gotcha, I'm sorry, yes,
Yeah, so
I
we
agree.
just-
It's down to 12 feet or so, and then he can do whatever he wants.
Wants to, okay, yeah, I agree. So we could grant the variance
The grant,
down to 10 feet.
So you would, we
He can do
propose a
whatever he wants.
motion to amend the variance request to a 10-foot requirement.
Minimum.
Does anybody else, so that's your amendment to the variance, sir?
That's a recommendation
Recommendation?
to vote on as opposed to.
I presume that would be suitable for the homeowner? Okay. Okay, so we have a variance request augmentation from a 16-foot request to a 10-foot, based upon the .5 lot size small, if he was just a .5 over. So do I have a motion for that?
So again, I make the motion that we grant a variance request to allow a minimum setback of 10 feet.
Okay, motion has been made. Someone second the motion?
I'll second the motion again.
Okay. All right, now we need to vote on the motion. All in favor of such motion to 10 feet, please raise your hand. All raise their hand, all pass, so motion carries. Thank you, staff, for your diligence. Thank you for all those that participated in doing your civic duty, protect the town. Thank you. Nothing else on the agenda for tonight. Can I have a motion for dismiss?
I'll motion to dismiss.
Second.
Motion dismissed, seconded. Thank you very much. Thank y'all. Thank you, town.